So we have put some gradients, some round corners, some other CSS properties and so on that work on modern browsers. But what happens when we have to support an older browser? So what about older browsers? So now we are going to enter in a new chapter, browser compatibility. First of all, what is it? This doesn't mean that you can forget about older browsers, be it through graceful degradation or other methods. Side question, what browsers do you think that you'll have to support in 10 years? Well, probably something like this. Why? Everyone's Chrome version will probably be higher by the end of this presentation. Firefox, Opera, and other browsers users are savvy enough to care about updates. However, IE most times, or until recently, was dependent on the version of the Windows. And this version is of course controlled by many system admins on corporate networks, of course, meaning that people are not able to either to install other browser, neither to change the IE version. So browsers behave differently. Can we live with it? If so, we actually can apply a graceful degradation. Graceful degradation is the art of letting go all of those elements that are not sufficiently important visually to impact the user. So the question is, are the round corners really that important that percentage of people using IE7 cannot live without? Probably not. So a good example of this is actually here. If we look on to the top version and the bottom version, we can clearly see differences. However, users using different browsers, probably they are not going to notice. Notice that from the top to the bottom, we lost the border radius and also the box shadowing set. But we can definitely afford not having them. There's no impact for the user. Additionally, as browsers get older, their market share diminishes. So you have to manage the time you spend making the things pixel perfect. Once again, can we live with that? If not, then the problem starts. Is there a main browser that we have to support? If so, let's install it everywhere. If there isn't, well, let's find one. How can we find one? Well, first of all, if possible, check the site analytics, if there are some. So in this case, and this is actually a real case, we can clearly see that IE is used by 68% of our users, and that Firefox by 16% and Chrome by 12%. And notice that, as you probably already guessed, these analytics are actually pretty old. So this means that we should define the starting browser right from the start of the project. If your client tells you, okay, you have to support IE, well, it's not enough to say IE, it's important to specify which version. So in this case, in this portal, we could clearly see that 66% of the people were using IE 8, 16% IE 9, and 12% IE 7. 12% means that browser cannot be discarded, cannot be disregarded. It's important for us to have the notion of this. The baseline browser was installed, but something that you need to have in mind is that there will always be differences between browsers. And a good example of this is forms. Every browser kinds of implements the forms its own way. By forms, I mean by the combo boxes. And one of the biggest or the most different things is actually the input file upload. This widget is actually different in almost every browser, and as you can see here, and the client tells you that it needs to be equal in the same browser and you should call their attention to this. This is actually different in every browser, and even if you go to the Facebook, you're going to see that they didn't fix this, they didn't care about this, so it is as it is. Well, There will always be differences, and we need to have the notion of that. But is IE going to be supported? If not, we are in good shape. If yes, okay, our problems are going to start and are going to live with us during the entire project. So first of all, you should, when supporting IE, you should count with the double of the time of the development time. Additionally, you should spend more time assuring the quality or assuring testing that application is behaving as expected in the browser. Additionally, the box model works differently in IE6, so it actually means that the shoes and the head actually count as visual height. So as you can imagine, this can be troublesome. Additionally, there are all of those bugs that will never be fixed because it's no longer a supported browser. And then, of course, we should ask, do we really want to support IE6? Nevertheless, there are a couple of weapons of choice to flattening the browser differences. So first of all, we have CSS hacks that we are going to see in a moment. Then we have conditional CSS, modernizer, and polyfills. First of all, you can use hacks, but only if you really need to. So if we want to target browsers like IE6 and below, we can actually do that. So put an underscore before the property, the CSS property. If we want if we want to target the IE7 browser and IE6 and so on, we have to put that symbol. If we want to target IE8 and below, we have to put /9. If we want to target IE8 and IE9, we have to put that. If we want to target IE9, we should put there. And I could keep on and on because there are already some hacks for IE10 and for IE11 as well. Regarding conditional CSS, which is a better way of doing this, it's much cleaner and also much understandable that this style is going to be applied when we are dealing with IE7 browser. How could we do this? We could achieve this by doing this conditional, these HTML ifs that are going to be interpreted by the EA browser. And if it's in IE7, what's going to happen is that the HTML will have a class IE7, so that we can do something like this. There are already some components in OutSystems that enables you to do this, and what we're going to happen is that on a document level element is going to add the class IE9 and IE. So this takes us to the next tool, which is Modernizer. Modernizer doesn't make your browser more modern. It actually makes it recognizable by some elements and provides feature detection so that we can verify if the browser supports, for example, round corner. And if it doesn't, we could just do an override on the CSS. An example of this is on lifetime. You notice that on the top, you can see on the HTML, you can see the class JS, border radius, box shadow, text shadow, and CSS scroll bar. This means that Modernizer ran and that it added these classes with the intention of telling you that this browser supports these elements. And the interesting thing about Modernizer is that we are able to create packages regarding what we want to detect or not. An extreme example, on the other hand, is the one below, where we are actually detecting a lot of stuff. And by detecting a lot of stuff, this also has the consequence of taking longer to detect everything. And notice that it also added the class IE and IE7, enabling us to use the previous technique. Polyfills. Polyfills emulate new functionality on browsers that don't support it. Usually this happens by means of a script that emulates the behavior, and running features that were supposed to be native using scripts actually comes with a cost. And this is what I would like to call your attention to, because this really comes with a cost. So you should be careful and test alternatives before actually using this kind of scripts. However, I'm going to try to give you some conditions to use polyfills. So first of all, you should use it for small changes, such as, for example, doing a round border radius or round corners. Another thing is, in runtime, it should only be applied to a few elements. Example of usage of a polyfill in OutSystems is actually on Service Center. You can see that the tabs, factory and monitoring, are actually rounded corners even on IE7. And this is done with the pi.